So we have talked broadly about what market research is. We have got some understanding of what the industry structure is, what kind of companies there are, how the industry is classified and so forth. Now let's start talking about primary market research, and let us start with understanding the process of primary market research, right? So these are the stages in a market research study. Okay, the key question, and it goes through all these stages up to interpretation of the findings. This is when the project ends, right? If you remember in the earlier chapter, I talked about it's primarily a marketing subject and not a statistical subject. And you look at it here, there isn't much about statistics. Statistics comes a little bit here in specific design and sampling, comes a little bit design and analyzing. But most of it is about good project management and good marketing understanding. Okay, so what is the key question? Before that, we'll come to that, but let me just read this out for you in case it is not clear on your screen. We first identify the key question of the study. We expand the key question into a larger set of questions. Once we decide what we want to find out, so these two are about what do we want to find out. And then we decide how are we going to go about finding it out. Right? So what kind of research approach do we require? And within that, can we nail down very specifics like, what kind of sample size, what kind of towns we're going to do with it. Then we're going to write a questionnaire for that or a DG. Now what is a DG? We will come to this. It is part of qualitative research. A DG is discussion guide. Okay. And then we actually execute. We collect the data. And then we analyze the data. And then we interpret what that means. And when we talk about interpretation, we're talking about what it means from a marketing decision point of view. Therefore, given the findings, what should be the marketing decision? Is really what interpretation is all about, right? So let's go on to looking at each of these in a little bit of detail. So the key question, every study needs one well-articulated key question, right? And you'll be surprised how often people don't seem to internalize this thing. You don't start a study with a hazy idea of what you want to find out. You have to be very clear saying, this is what I want to mainly find out from the study. That could be 5, 6 things. But there has to be one primary objective. It has to be very, very clearly articulated in marketing terms, not in general common man terms, in marketing terms. And you're doing the study because of that one main reason. You're not doing the study because of the secondary reasons. The secondary reasons don't justify the time and expenditure for the study. It is the main reason that justifies the time and expenditure for the study. So here are some examples of that one key question. I have got a new product that I plan to bring in the market. What will be the likely demand for this product? This is one example of a well-articulated question, right? I have launched a new, say, biscuit in the market, right? Does my new biscuit taste better from children's point of view compared to the competitor biscuit? So is my product better than the competitor's product? This is a well-articulated question. How many people read the Hindu newspaper? Well-articulated question. On what device do people see the YouTube? There are some examples, and these are the kind of studies that we do in practice. Right? Is this clear? We'll go forward. Now, that one key question will have a whole lot of related marketing questions. And that's what we're going to talk about. So, this is where the marketing understanding becomes extremely important. The brand manager should be able to walk up to the market researcher and say, listen, I want to find this out. Then the market researcher should go back and say, if you want to find out this one key question, you need to answer these 4-5 other related questions, right? So, for example, if the key question is, will my new product concept work in the market? I'm sorry, we have to go back one slide. If the key question is, I'm going to launch a new product. So the brand manager tells the market researcher, I'm going to launch a new product. I plan to. The product is not yet ready, but I've got a concept description. Can you tell me whether my concept will appeal? Will it appeal in the market? Will it work in the market? So the market researcher has to be able to understand. He has to have enough conceptual knowledge to say. So the question of will a new concept work in the market is actually the following sets of questions. Do people like the idea? Do people find it relevant? Do people find it unique and well differentiated from what is already there in the market? Do people find it credible, that is believable? And is the price value proposition, the proposed price, is it attractive? All these things, if the answer is yes to all these things, then the answer is yes to this overall. If the answer is no to all these things, then the answer is no to the overall. But what happens in real life is, it is yes to some of it and no to some of it, which is why the interpretation skill becomes extremely important. So you cannot straight away go and ask consumers, will the new concept work? No. You have to ask consumers, do you like the idea? I'm describing the idea to you. Do you like? Is it relevant for you? Is it something different from what you've already seen? Do you believe that I can do this for you? Right? I plan to price it at so and so rupees. Does that look attractive to you? That is when you understand, that's when you get the answer to the one key question. So this is conceptual clarity which the researcher needs to possess. So every key question will have its own respective, set of appropriate expanded list of questions, right? So I've given one example here, and if we have a chapter on concept testing which comes later in this course, you will study this in more detail. But similarly, if you want to study will an advertising work or is my brand in a healthy condition, there are some related key questions for that which we will go through. Right? Shall we go forward? Okay. Now, having identified and having agreed that these are the key questions, how do we go about finding the key questions? Now, based on the nature of the question, we have to first decide whether the study, if you remember, we talked about various kinds of research. So, to begin with, you have to ask yourself, can I do desk research for the study or do I need primary research? The last class, you talked about another word for desk research. What is that? Another name for desk research?
Secondary.
Excellent. Yeah. So, can I do secondary research or do I need primary research? If I need primary research, do I need to do quantitative research or qualitative research? These are terms which you're not familiar with, but we'll come to that, right? If I have decided whether I want quantitative or qualitative, then the question, can I collect the data online? Or can I do it on the telephone? Or do I need to do it face to face by talking to people? Or can I do it on a video by talking to people? Or can I do it in group discussions or in depth interviews? This comes under qualitative. These come under quantitative. Right? Okay? So, you have to decide which of these techniques we need to use to answer the key questions that we are talking about. Any questions? Yes, please.
So, is there a best method to capture responses from?
No.
Which would be is there something which is more commonly used than the other approaches?
Not really. There's no one best method. It's a lot like saying, if you follow cricket, should I have a batsman or a bowler in the team? Should I have a fast bowler or a spin bowler in the team? If the wicket helps fast bowlers, you need a fast bowler. If you've got a weak batting lineup, you need an extra batsman. If the wicket helps spin bowling, you need a spin bowler. So depending on that situation, there is an appropriate approach. Inherently, it is not that this is better or that is better. It depends on what you're trying to find out. It comes from the key question and expand the list of questions. Based on that, you have to decide which is the appropriate approach or which is the optimum approach. There is no concept of best or the not so good approaches here.
And do people normally patiently answer in a telephonic interview? Do people people answer patiently in a face-to-face interview? Because everybody seems to be so busy.
That's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. So, I started my career in research 33 years ago. At that time, it was quite possible for us to go to a respondent's house and spend about half an hour there. Today, people have less time for anything. It's not just for market research interview. In general, people are too busy, or at least they claim they're too busy. They certainly don't have the patience. They don't have the attention span for a lot of things. So, a rule of thumb is that a face-to-face interview, if you manage to go to the person's house, you can talk for 12 to 15 minutes. They won't throw you out in less than that. If you've got a person on the phone, you can talk for about 5 minutes. Beyond that, they'll be like, how long is this going to take? I have other work to do. If you've got a person sitting on a video call, again the same 12 to 15 minute rule applies. Online, we don't actually know with how much attention people have online. There's not enough research on that method of collecting research. But again, a 4 to 5 minute or a 6 minute timeline is a good window. So again, to answer your question, is it that online is better because people don't have time? No. The point is, every method has got an appropriate time window which we have to stick to. If we stick to that time window, we are safe. We won't go wrong. Yes.
So, have you seen anything like the youngsters or people up to a certain age group more comfortable with video interviews and online link, whereas the older age group is more comfortable with the
Interestingly, no. I have found, just for example, you would imagine that in a very conservative small town in any of our states, a lady who is not working, who is from a lower middle socioeconomic class, and she just stays at home and looks after the household when husband goes to work, they would be very, very hesitant to talk to strangers. We have found them also to be very, very comfortable in online interview. They open up, they talk comfortably. So, doesn't seem to be an issue.
But would they equally be comfortable giving up an online survey?
I doubt it. It's a very individual thing. I would still say online surveys will work better with target groups where at least 80% of that particular population is active online. So if you're talking about a stay-at-home lady in a small town who is not very well educated, she's unlikely to be very active online. I mean, she's not going to be sitting and browsing, timesofindia.com or crickinfo.com or something. Her time online is going to be very, very limited to maybe Facebook. So she may not be very comfortable filling up online. I would say that conversational techniques, interviews will work better with her. Administered interviews will work better with such people. Right? Can we go forward? So, having decided what kind of research we are going to do, as in the research approach, for that approach we have to nail down specifics. Right? So, for example, if we have decided, just for example, let us say we are going to do quantitative research. Let us say we are going to do face-to-face research. Then we have to talk about, are we going to do probability sampling or non-probability sampling? And if it is probability sampling, quantitative research normally means probability sampling. We'll see that. Then within that, are we going to do systematic class sampling or cluster sampling? What is the sample size going to be? Is it going to be 100? Is it going to be 150? Or is it going to be 50? What do you think? What do you think is an appropriate sample size for the study? Take a guess, take a wild guess. Doesn't have to be right. Just take a wild guess. Is it 50? Is it 150? Is it 100? Is it 2000? Is 10,000 better than 2,000? Is 2,000 better than 50? Well, the point is there are specific rules for deciding what the sample size should be. Right? Those rules will tell you what the minimum sample size should be. Now, is 10,000 better than 2,000? Yes. Is 2,000 better than 50? Yes. But it is not that, the improvement is like this. Initially, from 5 to 50, the improvement is like this. From 50 to 100, it's like this. From 100 to 200, it's like this. From 500 to 2,000, it's only a slight improvement. So at some point, you decide saying, I've reached a good a good level of accuracy. And for that, you have certain rules to tell you what it should be. So, from a very unreliable sample to a moderate reliable sample, there's a sharp improvement in the data. But once you've touched that reliable number, further increase in sample size will give you only marginal improvements in the data. That is the point. Okay. So then we have to define the target group. Now, what do I mean by target group? What kind of consumers are we going to talk to? So we have to define people in terms of, are they men or women? What kind of age group are we talking to? What kind of income group are we going to talk to? Etc. 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 We have to define it. We have to define it in terms that the entire marketing fraternity understands. It can't be, oh, we want people who are open-minded. That is not specific enough. You need terminology which people can understand. Right? And then where are we going to study? Are we going to do it in Bombay? Are we going to do it in Delhi, in Chennai? Or are we going to do it in Tirunelveli and Nagpur and, Meerut? Or are we going to do it in rural areas? All that follows from those key questions. Depending on what we want to find out, so when we say what we want to find out, at the same time we also define from whom we want to find out, meaning from what kind of people, target group, where do we want to find those, which is what kind of cities, and then we go into how do we want to find out, which is the research approach. Right? This is the way this goes. Okay, so far? Any questions?
Please elaborate systematic cluster convenience.
Yes, but you're jumping the gun. That is probably the very next chapter. We'll come to that.
Sir, we have 50 sample size and 1000 sample size. Which one will be accurate? 50 or 1000?
There are situations where, 1000 will always be more accurate than 50. But there are situations where 1000 is much more accurate than 50. There are some situations where 1000 is only slightly more accurate than 50. And that is what you will learn in sampling. Those are the principles of the sampling which we borrow from statistics, which market research borrows from statistics. Okay? So having decided from whom, what are we going to find out, from whom are we going to find out, where are we going to find out, and how we are going to find out, we start writing a questionnaire. So market research textbooks will use, terms like the data collection instrument. Some market research textbooks and some academic researchers will talk about the schedule. Just forget all that. Just call it questionnaire. Right? We are talking about market research as practiced in the industry. It is called a questionnaire. If it is used in quantitative research, it's called a questionnaire. If it is used in qualitative research, it is called a discussion guide. That's all. There are only two things here. There's no need to get, drawn into any other kind of confusion in terminology here. So a questionnaire tends to be very structured. Tends to be very structured. Structured as in, after question 1, you must go to question 2, and based on yes or no answer to question 2, you may go to question 5 or to question 3. All those things are completely laid out. So the person, if it is an administrator, if somebody is asking the questions, an interviewer is asking the questions, he or she has no flexibility. They have to absolutely blindly follow what is there in the questionnaire. Right? A questionnaire can be used in online, can be used in mail surveys, where the respondents themselves fill up, which is called self-filled up questionnaire. So, market research questionnaires can be either administered. That means, somebody is asking the questions, or they can be self-filled up. Right? A discussion guide, on the other hand, is used in qualitative research, and it is administered by very, very skilled moderators. Right? So it tends to give a lot of flexibility to the person asking the question. The person can ask question 1, based on the answer, they can take an immediate decision to go to question 5 and then come back to question 2 later. Because the person asking the questions is himself or herself a very skilled researcher. So they have that kind of flexibility. But still they must make sure that all the questions are covered. They can't just skip questions completely. right? They can just skip it to the flow but come back to it later. They can't drop it completely, right? We will see examples of a discussion guide and a questionnaire in those appropriate, that chapter when it comes. Can we go forward? So data collection, it's just an operational execution element, right? And what we have to ensure is that there is no dishonesty. Because somebody is going out in the field and trying to get people to cooperate, they may be tempted to sit in a cool place and fill up with themselves and say, I went and knocked on 10 doors. So you have to make sure that the data is genuine. You have to make sure that, the deadlines for the project are met. So it is essentially a project management role, right? So which requires efficiency, etc. Efficiency, honesty, time management. Therefore, strict project management. Nothing else there. Anybody can do it. There's no special skill here. Is one way to look at it. But project management is tougher than most of those things. You have to be a very good manager to manage a project well, right? So it is a very misleading thing to say anybody can do it. Anybody who has any good manager can do it. Is a correct way to look at it. You don't have to know research. If you're a good manager, you can manage a project well. Okay, let's go forward. And finally, we come to analysis. So once the data is collected, for quantitative research, we do analysis, and 90% of what we require can be met through simple percentages. Another 5 to 7% can be met through simple significance testing. All these are not always needed. See, sometimes people do it because it looks impressive. But it's like, I used the same example before. If you fall ill and you go to your family doctor, he will ask you to stick out your tongue, he'll measure your pulse, he'll put a stethoscope, and he will say, you probably have a throat infection, gargle your throat, have this medicine, come back after 5 days. Correct? He will, only if you don't recover, he will do more higher order powerful blood test than this. Most of them, they just send you back home, saying you do this and come back. Right? So, market research data analysis is not like that. Very often simple percentages will answer most of the questions. Once in a while, when they don't give clarity into the findings, you require higher order techniques. Nothing more than that. There are basically two kinds of software tools. There is SPSS and there is Quantum. These are the most commonly used tools worldwide. There are a whole lot of other data analysis tools as well. For quality research, we actually do something called content analysis. What it really means is the respondents are speaking something. We are trying to understand the content of what they are speaking, which is understand to get the insight. That's why we call it content analysis. And there are tools like NVivo which are for this. But I would always say that good qualitative research is really a function of understanding the content, not a function of the tools that we use. The tools can be used, but the tools should be a slave to our work. We should not become a slave to the tools. Right? Yes.
So in the previous chapter, we were discussing about how it is not as important to learn all the formulae for statistics and be a statistician for you to make good interpretation of the data.
Yes.
Similarly, do you need to understand how the software works, or do you need to know more about the software? Things like quantum and spaces, should you be well versed with it?
Not at all, actually. Again, a drawback from my own experience. I started my career in a company called IIT. Back then, what used to happen is that I was a market researcher. I used to have a data processing team to support. They would use the software. I never even saw the software. So it's not really necessary. But, yeah. Can we go forward? And interpretation. At the end of the day, you'll have a whole lot of numbers. You'll have a whole lot of verbatim responses set in qualitative research. What does it mean? What decision do you take? So the numbers need to be interpreted in the competitive marketing context, keeping in mind consumer behavior. So it needs a broader understanding. At the end of which, you go back to this market researcher goes back to the brand manager and says, you came to me with a question. That question, for example, was, should I launch this product? Is it ready for launch in the market? I have done the research study. This is what done the study. My answer to you is yes, you can launch the product, or no, you cannot launch the product for so and so reasons. That is when the job ends. The brand manager will then say, sit down with me and give me your logic, and they can discuss it. And brand manager say, but I am interpreting the data differently. But the market researcher has to have the confidence to say, no, this is what the data means. After that, final decision lies with the brand manager. Are we okay with this so far? So can we just sum up what we've seen here? I'll come to this later. We have a topic on this. Yeah. So a typical market research study passes through 8 stages. Right? It starts with, what does it start with?
Starts with key question.
Identification of the key question. Articulating the key question. What does it end with?
Interpretation.
Excellent. So, some of these stages are strongly rooted in research theory. Right? How to write a questionnaire, for example. What kind of data analysis do you do? Okay? There's a good theory. Well-established rules are there. Protocols are there which you can follow. Some of them require a high degree of skill and experience, like interpretation of the findings. Merely knowing the principles and the theory is not enough. Right? Couple of other points which I have not actually talked about. We will just spend 2 minutes on that. We can do that actually. Let's go back to slides. I've repeatedly talked about qualitative research and quantitative research. And qualitative research is very interesting. It's very fascinating because it talks about consumers, psychology, so on and so forth. So there's a simple rule about when to use. So when you want to, I'm so sorry, I didn't activate the pen. When you want to have data and you say so many percentage of the population is probably behaving in this way or buying so product, which means from the sample you want to project to the population. Whenever from the sample you want to project to the population, you must necessarily do quantitative research. In other words, you need larger sample sizes. Whenever you want in-depth insight into the consumer's mind, a deep understanding, then you necessarily need qualitative research. So this side of the equation is quantity. This side is quality. Now, there are situations where you need both. There is a technique called semi-depth interviews, not depth interviews, semi-depth interviews, which is like you can have a fairly okay sample size and fairly okay level of depth of insight as well. Okay, when you don't want insight or projectability, obviously you don't do research anyway. I mean, that's not relevant at all, right? So this is the basic guideline. You'll understand this better and better as we talk about, when you talk about qualitative research, you'll understand more about this. So remember what I said here, we'll come back to this principle, right? We can go down one side. Like one of you asked a question just some time ago. These days you hear a lot about online studies, but it's still not a proven methodology for certain target audiences. It works excellently for audiences which are very active online. Yeah, thank you. But it doesn't work well at all in audiences where only a small percentage is online. Because then your sample becomes biased if you do it online. That is the logic there, right? Increasingly, face-to-face interviews are being replaced by video interviews on, to Zoom or WhatsApp or Google Meet or something. There's no need to go to a person's house. The whole world today, and as I said, even people living in smaller towns, even ladies who are not, employed, are very comfortable talking on a video call. Everybody is doing it with their friends. They're also doing it okay for a market research interview. In fact, in the building where I live, there's a Nepali watchman, right? He doesn't have any possessions in life. He's got a bicycle. He's got a basic, bedding for himself. He's got a place to sleep. And he's got a nice tab and a nice screen. And he's got a mobile data. I don't know how much he pays for it. He talks to his people back in Nepal. I see him all the time, jabbering away in his language with beautiful video clarity. So that is how common video face-to-face chatting has become, right? So you might have, obviously WhatsApp is there, obviously Google Meet is there, Zoom is there, Google Duo is there, Google Hangout is there. Equally, there's a tool called FaceTime, which we don't use much of here, which is there in some other countries, right? So that is, I think it's a given today. And the same thing works for market research as well. Today's newspaper says that India's cricket selection committee is sitting down to discuss issues through video conference. Earlier days, they would all travel to one place and sit. So, I mean, there's a wonderful new development, right? So, this method of Zoom interviews, it has lowered cost. It doesn't disrupt the respondent's life. He doesn't have to come somewhere, spend half a day, and just do it on the video, right? The person asking the question can sit in an air-conditioned room. He doesn't have to go out into the hot sun, right? And mobile data is so penetrated. Just about everybody has mobile data today. There's not even a bias in your sampling, right? So we'll just go on one slide. So to sum up, the choice of quality or quantity should be driven entirely based on what you want to do, right? It is based on the key question. We're back to the key question. Everything comes from the key question. You decide the approach based on that. And video call interviews are fast becoming the preferred method for the information, right? So we'll close this chapter here. Any questions? Okay, thank you.